Well, greetings and welcome to episode 4 of the Self-Build and Renovation Live by NSBRC. We're back up on the mezzanine for this one, which I said before is my favourite location in the whole of the NSBRC centre. So we're back here for this one. We're doing something a little bit different. We're actually recording this during the day so that I can have my lovely guests here with us. But we're actually going to be broadcasting this tomorrow night. You with me? You still following? So it's going to be going out at 6:30 because we recognize that a lot of people are busy when we try to broadcast it live during the day, but it's still got that authentic feel because we're just having a conversation about it. You can still put your questions and comments in there because we'll have moderators watching, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, we'll be able to watch those. So please, if you have questions during the episode, type them there and someone will be able to reply to you accordingly, but a little bit different this time. So my name is Dawes from Visual PR, but I'm going to introduce my guests. First of all, you can see him right here next to me. I've got Jasper Meade from the PYC Construction Company. Is that correct? PYC. Welcome to the show, C.
Thank you. Hi, Chris.
I said C with the PYC then. I followed it on. But welcome to the show. We'll come on to your company in more detail. Next to you, we've got Cotterell, director from Passivhaus with a PH15 system. That's correct. The main thing that you guys are known for. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thank you.
And I'm going to then add remotely all the way from Scotland. It is Panczyna, associate and chartered architect at Allan Corfield Architects. Hi, Iga.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for inviting me. I wish I was there with you, but I am in Scotland today. But what I was going to say, I will be in NSBRC on the 23rd during the Passivhaus workshop. I'll be giving a talk, so I'll be there in some point this month.
See, we should just give you the job there because you did a great job of promoting that exactly all three of you are going to be here talking at this, aren't you? On Saturday, the 23rd of November, 10 till 4. I'm going to quickly put up on the screen now the banner that shows you where to go to book your ticket. So it's on the NSBRC website. Go to what's on the workshops, and then you'll find the Passivhaus workshop. And so much useful information. So get yourself signed on for the free tickets to come along to that one on Saturday, the 23rd of November. To find out the people that I've just said that are going to be speaking there, let's work our way round from my left. So Jasper, tell us about yourself and your company.
So our company, we're based in Mid Wales, PYC Group, so construction being part of our company. And we specialize in off-site manufacturing of an I-beam Passivhaus timber frame system. Okay. So we're delivering passive houses around the country.
I know we're going to go into Passivhaus more, but what's I-beam?
I-beam is it's a timber structure, so it's engineered joist or rafter or stud, made from timber.
Fantastic, thank you for that one. And Jay, as I understand it, you pretty much wrote the book on Passivhaus.
Yeah, I co-authored the Passivhaus handbook some years ago, probably 10 years ago now. In my professional job, we have a system built in a similar way to what Jasper does, but we do a complete solution. So we do also the glazing and the ventilation system solution as well. And another thing that's different is we don't construct. So we do train. Part of our ethos is to do training for people to help them to transition rapidly up to a better quality of build.
And so the PH15 system. What does PH15?
Well, PH for Passivhaus.
Of course, yeah.
And 15 is actually the maximum amount of energy that you're allowed to use for every square meter of your house to heat your home. So it's that's the sort of, for the Passivhaus Classic, it's called. The Passivhaus Classic allows you 15 kilowatt hours or units of energy for every square meter of your home.
I love it.
So PH15.
I love it. That is so obvious as soon as you explain that. I'm glad I didn't pre-ask that one because I was genuinely impressed with that one. That's really cool. And then Iga, obviously I know that you're from Allan Corfield Architects, but what do you do in the company, especially when it comes to Passivhaus?
So I specialize in design and delivery of low energy homes and passive homes. As part of the company, obviously we opened the company in 2009, and we particularly deal with self-builders and designing, their dream homes to the low energy standard levels. We've got offices in Scotland and in Swindon and NSBRC, and we cover all of the UK. And we have developed our offering to provide a kind of comprehensive service to the self-built clients. So we do offer a 3D modeling VR service. We offer obviously Passivhaus design services. I'm a Passivhaus consultant, certified consultant. And we also extended our offering to include for structural engineering. So when you do come in to us, as quite a lot of people, self-builders would do as a first point of contact on their design journey, you would be offered a kind of comprehensive service to get you all the way to the site.
Fantastic. Well, it certainly sounds to me like a good mix of there for people to come on the 23rd of November. Makes absolute sense. So go to the NSBRC website, book yourself on, totally free, and come along and hear more about it. Now, I'm going to start with the overarching question. And Jay, I'm going to take this one to you to start with. What is Passivhaus for those that might not know?
So Passivhaus is just an energy standard. It's an international energy standard. It's the highest energy standard in the world, in fact. It was created by a physicist who was very interested to know why our buildings were so energy inefficient. And it's very commonly known. It's called the performance gap. It's well known in the UK, having a very large performance gap between what is designed and what actually you get. So he was looking at that, and then he came up with this sort of recipe for how to get a very energy efficient home or building. It's usually up to 90% more efficient than a normal new build. So he's really targeting the space heating, and it's done through something called fabric first. That means you concentrate on the fabric of the building, and the walls and the windows and the doors, and then you get this incredible performance, and you get lots of co-benefits, which is quite interesting to people now. You get really high indoor thermal comfort, and you also get very high indoor air quality.
Yes, I heard about this. The quality of the air, the health benefits are quite significant.
Yes, in some places in Europe, it's known as a health standard.
Really?
So they emphasize more the health than they do the energy, which is quite interesting. And I had somebody saying, "Oh, I'm building a passive house," and the question from the person was, "Oh, who's unwell?" So they were actually thinking that they were doing it for some sort of health. And we have had one or two clients who have been doing it for a health for a member of the family, which has interested me.
Yeah, we've seen that as well. For,
oh, really?
If they've got allergies, then you could have filtrated air coming through into the building. So if you've got hay fever, have really bad hay fever, then you could walk into your house and have this fantastic air quality. But it's comfort. Comfort is another name that they've often called passive houses. Comfort house. Comfort standard.
Yeah. I mean, is it an exaggeration? I've heard people say that you don't get into dust. Is that an exaggeration?
I think it's an exaggeration, but there is definitely less dust. I've noticed.
You dust less.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
That'd be my priority.
Because you've got filtered air. What it is, it's outside air being brought in, and the house has continued being refreshed, but with filtered air. So obviously that's taking a lot of the dust and the dirt away at that point.
Does that mean that you don't need to open your windows?
You don't have to, but you do. And the actual fact is you'll open your windows more because you open the windows more when you're comfortable. So when we say it's a comfort house, you will actually end up opening your windows and doors more, but you don't have to. So when it's cold in the winter, and it doesn't normally, you don't think, oh, I'll open the windows now. But once you close the windows, you know that your house is being ventilated well.
Yeah. Yes. It was some sort of early misconceptions about passive house that you had to shut the windows, they had to stay shut. It was an airtight building.
Yeah.
Yet you can open your windows as much as any house. And the reality is that when there's strong cold winds of a winter, you wouldn't want to open the windows, but you still have that fantastic air quality and thermal comfort.
And what you've done is actually, it shouldn't be called an airtight. In a way, you should call it a draft-free
Yeah.
or a leak-free house. That would be a better way of saying it, maybe, would help people understand. Because if you've got a very leaky house, all you're doing is leaking all your heat out constantly, then you keep having to reheat the air. Whereas in a passive house, you've not got those leaks, you haven't got those drafts, so you retain the heat.
Wow, that does make sense. I mean, Iga, obviously from the design perspective, is that you're presumably having to know what is their focus. Is it the health side? Is it the comfort side?
Or the environment.
The environment, the cost savings. That's got to come into the design as well.
Definitely. I mean, this is one of the initial conversations we would have with potential clients on, what sort of level of comfort would they want within their home, what sort of energy efficiency they would be aiming to achieve. And obviously the budget is also the key for a lot of people. But when it comes obviously to designing a passive house, the whole beauty of it is that you are going to be reducing those energy bills. And what's more important, which Jay and Jasper mentioned, obviously the comfort internal within the house you're creating. So I'm just going to pick up on what has been said in terms of the ventilation and opening the windows. I mean, part of the design process when we look at the creation of the low energy passive home is relying on those very, very basic principles of building physics, which are the fabric first. And one of them is using a natural kind of ventilation within the home. So as you know, we all observe what's happening to the global temperatures. There's risks of overheating. So again, using the windows and that passive nighttime cooling ventilation through the windows is the kind of part of the whole approach of designing the dwelling. So yeah, excuse me.
And in fact, Iga, I was also thinking that it's not just the materials and the design, but even the I was going to say location. That doesn't do justice what I'm thinking of, because it can be, where it is relating to the sun, to shade, to hills, to whatever else. You have to take those things into consideration as well.
Yes, I mean, this is where we would normally start, Chris. So we would be looking at the site. So if you do have a plot that you're looking at, that's the moment that you should be having those initial conversations with architects or any other professionals who design to test what is feasible on that site. So perhaps there are deciduous trees you could be utilizing for obviously providing you some shade during summer, but obviously during winter you want to get that free solar gain as much as you can, so you can utilize those aspects of the site within a design. And orientation of the building is quite key, as is the form of the building. So some people would pose the question is can I build any kind of building to the passive house standard? And the simple answer is yes, you can. It will depend how much money you want to invest. So we do tend to work with something called a form factor when we design. So what it means is a ratio of the external building area to the heated floor area. And the lower the ratio, the less kind of insulation investment you have to do to make the building to the passive house standard. So of course you can design anything, but the most kind of complex forms will be more expensive.
I mean, we've touched on the fact that there can be, what you were saying about, is it a workbook you've got with a massive array of different designs?
Yes, on our project page, you can see passive house certified houses. And some we've got one on there that I know it has a form factor of like maybe 4.5, which you might think, I don't know what that means. But then we have other ones that are at 2. So that would mean that one that's over 4 has twice as much thermal envelope to floor area. So you can imagine when you're paying for that high quality thermal envelope, obviously that house is going to be a lot more expensive than the one that was 2.
Yes.
So you can do whatever you like in passive house, and even the orientation is not as important as people think, but it can have cost implications.
Okay.
So, I mean, it is important to some degree, but it's not as important. It's not the be all and end all. But the cost variation between one house to the same standard and another house can be extremely significant.
So, for example, you took a 80 square meter house that would have to have very thick thermal walls, quite probably, to insulate it because it's got a very poor form factor. But then if you had a tower block or a big block of flats, which could be counted as one, that would have a much better form factor. You could reduce the insulation levels because you wouldn't need so much.
Right.
So that's a crude way to look at it.
Yeah. And so, Iga, your side on the design, you even get involved, as you say, in that form factor. And so that's why it needs this sort of almost cross-party involvement to get what you want.
I think that designers, because form factor happens very early on in the process,
Yeah.
and often, not always, it would be before Jasper and I became involved. So
ideally
design,
not,
and
but
ideally
yeah.
not, but
Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
And so if a client comes along with a design and their budget isn't huge, but the design that's been done for them has got a very high form factor, they may end up compromising performance when they didn't need to. And I would, if it was me and I was a self-builder, my number one would be I want a passive house. And I would much rather have the house designed with a better form factor and afford it than have something that had been designed with a poor form factor and not be able to afford it.
I mean, we always encourage early engagement. I mean, as everyone would want to, ideally, when you're building a house. So the more parties involved at that early stage, then the better chance of things not going wrong. So, and that's not just form factor, that's complexity of the design. So structurally, we would look at it and say, well, hang on a minute, that's going to be a bit tricky to build. Could you move that partition wall by 300 mil to help pick up that ridge beam, for instance? So there's lots of different ways. And a glazing specialist would say, be careful, don't put too much windows on that southeast facing wall because you will likely overheat, or if you do, encourage a bit of shading. So getting that full balance is it's tricky, but it's all
Sounds fun though as well.
It is fun, and there's a lot you can do to play with the different elements. And by far the most expensive uplift is, which people don't appreciate as much as they might, is the glazing.
Yeah.
So you're paying very high quality glazing, which is a lovely thing, and you'll really enjoy that glazing when you have it. But it is the most, if you want to talk about cost uplift, going to the triple glazing, which is part of Passivhaus, is a significant cost uplift, I would say, for a self-builder.
But a big difference to comfort.
Big difference. It's doing a lot of work in the whole performance. It's doing a lot of work.
Or could be the weakest link, presumably.
Or if
Exactly.
If you thought, I'll just do the walls and I won't do the wind, you break. It's a recipe, and you break the recipe.
Absolutely. Same with anything, is that you're only as strong as the weakest link.
Yeah, you have to bring that. You have to bring all the bits together for it to work, and then if you do, it's really amazing.
I can imagine. I mean, Iga, just picking up on this really, is that by its nature, your work is right at the beginning, and not just in this conversation, but so many is like, get us involved as early as possible, because you don't want to be wasting your time. You're just talking about the form. What was it again?
Form factor.
Form factor. Sorry. And you design it up here, and then they suddenly go to the the material side of it and go, oh well, I can't afford that. You presumably want everyone involved as early as possible.
Definitely, you took it out of my mouth, Chris. I was going to say that if you are on this journey, obviously some of you self-builders will have that design done before the architect has actually asked them the question, what the energy performance you are striving for, which is the part of the brief conversation you should have with your architect before you start any design process. And that will guide what is your brief. The architect should help you formulating that brief, obviously taking into consideration your requirements, etc. So when it comes to obviously the design involvement of professionals who specialize in this particular area of low energy passive is the key. And it's not just architects, it's everyone involved in the process. So structural engineers as well, they're going to be designing your structure. They're going to be putting, if it's a quite elaborate design, there may be a steel involved. The steel can become a cold bridge. So it's going to transfer your nice and warm air from the inside to the outside. So you're going to be losing the heat through that. So So all of the professionals and then the site, obviously operatives, need to be aware of what the detailing is, what the thermal bridges are, what the air tightness of the building should be, etc. So yeah, definitely start, with engaging with those conversations before you start the design. And just a little note on the windows that Jay mentioned, that obviously don't forget about one element, just to give you an idea or rule of thumb. If you're building to the low energy standard or Passivhaus standard, your wall's going to be super efficient, thermal efficient, super insulated. Quite often the modern designs feature large areas of glazing. So even with the best on the market triple glazing, that glazing is going to be between 4 to 6 times worse in terms of the energy performance than your wall. So it is a key to be specifying the highest you can afford effectively when it comes to glazing.
I'm going to end up, this is going to come to all three of you, because I think everybody's got an input on this, is that many people, when they're thinking about building their dream home, especially if it's their forever home or anything like that, by human nature, the first thing that starts coming into mind is things like, you called it the bling things, didn't you? I love that.
Yeah.
The kitchen, the cinema room, the bathroom.
Yeah. So we talk about fabric first. Make sure it's prioritized first on your cost elements as well.
Yeah.
And so look at what your house is going to cost you, running costs in the future, and that can be enormous if you don't get your fabric right. And that's money saved, which could upgrade your kitchen, for instance, if you wanted a better kitchen, couldn't afford
Further
it at
down the
start.
line.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need all those things from the get-go. I know that's the dream and that's what we want, but to have that patience, you're going to benefit from thinking about the bits that we're touching on here first, and then add or change or
it is a big balance. It's a balance of everything that you want in your house, and you want the best you can get at the start, but additions can be added. So for instance, we talk about fabric first, so not necessarily renewables at the start, but everybody would want renewables, but perhaps they could come in at a later date, so you future proof for that, so you enable that retrofitting, if you like, on the building. So if you can't afford it at the start of the build, maybe in a couple of years' time you could.
I mean, Igor, do you have that problem from the design that people sort of focus on the bling things too early?
They do, but what we tend to do in our practice, we tend to put a lot of kind of our knowledge and education of the clients before we start the design process. So we take them through, and again, this is coming back to the briefing conversation. Obviously, if it's your desire to move into that, turnkey solution house with this lovely kitchen, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you then say, you've got this certain amount of money within your budget, but you also want to have a low energy home, so there's that balance to be struck at that time, and to prioritizing, as Jasper said, will you invest the majority of the budget within that fabric first to get your forever home to be future proofed, to get the energy bills down to zero if you can, or would you want to spend some of that and compromise on that kind of healthy living environment to get yourself a nice lovely kitchen for £50,000. So yeah, it's about.
And Jay, I mean, I've just got a few words that were thrown in for reasons, and I think that you have to find out what their priorities are. Sustainability, reduce running costs, comfort, health, well-being, for example. And I guess it's almost about working out what is the priority for that client.
Well, I think we're in a slightly different role because we're supplying something that is Passivhaus suitable. That's all I do.
True.
And that's because I think that's how we should be building. I don't think it should be a choice. Unfortunately, it is a choice. So, but that's all that we do, because to me, it's just building well. It's also about decarbonising the way that we live in the West. So for me, it's an ethical matter. I know a lot of people do build Passivhaus. It's nothing to do with that for other reasons because of the co-benefits. But for me, it's an ethical issue that we should be building to high quality, and we should be building emitting as little carbon as possible. And so that's my key.
Yeah.
That's, as a person, that's my key motivation for my business and what I've done.
And am I right in believing that as a society we're more open to agreeing with you on that?
I think definitely it's shifting, and there have been cities and whole countries considering, like Scotland's been considering a passive house equivalent. So you see, you know, people who are running cities adopting the standard, and they are adopting it because they've made climate change declarations or similar. So, I mean, you think of the hundreds and hundreds of councils that have made climate change declarations. I mean, that in itself should make them adopt passive house. So, but maybe the step between making a declaration and actually what you do, that's a huge bridge. And what we try to do is provide solutions that say, well, this is how you do it, you know. So, you know, if you've made a declaration, can we just make these connections, please, across to the actual doing?
I keep declaring I'm going to go to the gym more, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And I think they're like...
So declaration's great. Say what you think, great. Watching, you know, Blue Planet, great.
Yeah.
But this is
But
why
let's how are we going to actually live? How do we live in a low carbon way and also have a high quality of life? And that's what Passive House shows you. Yeah, we can have a even higher quality of life.
Yeah.
And you know, that's what is intriguing to me, that you can have a higher quality of life when you actually start thinking these things through.
I'd like to stand up for councils, housing associations, because we do an insulation product, Warm Cell, which is made from recycled newspaper, and that's been used in some really fantastic large schemes of house building. The councils are building to passive house standards, building schools to passive house standards. So there's been some phenomenal growth where they specifically are concerned about their tenants, the pupils in the school, their health and well-being, and the running costs of these buildings. And so passive house in that field has been really helping fuel poverty, for instance, so reducing your heating costs by as much as 90%, and those are real figures. So it's phenomenal, and they've taken it up and they're standing up for it, which is fantastic.
And what I'd say as well, the people who are under financial stress in our society often have health related.
Yes.
So you provide them with a home, which is critical. We all need a home, but we also, if you provide a healthy home, you're giving people such a massive step up. You know, and I think you just can't underestimate both things. You're giving them low bills and you're giving them a health benefit.
And that's why I think, you know, NSBRC asking us to make this episode, this topic, is that the education, and like, for example, I can straight away take here is that, okay, I probably hadn't heard of Passive House before I started working these broadcasts with NSBRC, but even then it's been a gradual increase in understanding. And for example, even this one today, I hadn't fully considered the health bit. It was always the save money on bills with the, you know, the cost of living crisis and the environment. If I kind of picked out my two most obvious things that stood out, it was those. But I'm suddenly going, no, there's so much more here. Not just the reduction in dusting that I know I've got excited about, but that health element, that dust. What is it? What is it doing to me? Pollen. You know, hay fever sufferers.
I mean, diesel fuels from cars coming in,
especially in cities.
Cities, especially.
And some of the biggest problems that councils and housing associations have with their existing housing stock is dealing with damp problems, mold growth. Whereas so if you design into these performance standards, making sure that the fabric is absolutely right, you won't get mold, full stop. And that's
and mold is the biggest thing for health.
Mold,
living, especially black mold.
Yeah, because I mean that's spores, isn't it?
Spores,
that into us, we're breathing in and stuff like that. I mean, I think you've kind of alluded that it's possible. My question, with cynicism, but I believe is about to be put to bed, is that I was going to ask: could this become mainstream? Could the big builders?
Yes, they can, and they are. And this is, there are always going to be an element of builders, developers who want to make as much money as possible, so they build as quickly as possible to the lowest possible standards to save money. But we are now finding developers, so we're currently working for developers, building houses which are Passivhaus standards, because they know that that's better quality to build. So, but it's not just that, they'll be able to sell for a higher price. But on the large schemes that we've been involved with, the councils, housing associations, we're finding that the costs there are 5%, 5 to 10%. Some people are challenging that they could do a neutral cost uplift because you don't need such a heating system in there. And you took the life costs, 100% is the better way forward. I think it's just a complete no-brainer.
That was the exact phrase I was going to use. Is it sounding to me like an absolute no-brainer? Again, I'm going to emphasise: get yourself down. Saturday, 23rd of November, 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. is a Passivhaus workshop. Go onto the NSBRC website and go to the workshops that are available, and get yourself booked on, and come along and find out more. Educate yourself. It doesn't matter which level you're at. I'm finding that there's still more that we can find out. It's more plausible than we might think.
Yeah,
it's absolutely plausible.
Yeah. I think it definitely jumped out at me as something very obvious. A question then: is this only new build homes?
Right. So there is a Passivhaus equivalent standard called NFIT, which is slightly lower because it's harder to do in a retrofit, but it is much more complex retrofit and more expensive. And you have to understand what you're doing when you start messing about with an existing building, and it's very easy to create problems.
I use the nursery rhyme: swallowing the spider to catch the fly.
Yes.
And
so you really need somebody involved.
But you don't get spiders.
Yeah.
No, sorry, of course, yeah.
The ACB is, as the Association of Energy Conscious Builders has been encouraging, these retrofit coordinators. So you get a retrofit coordinator in to sort of help you come up with and maybe because it's expensive, you do it step by step is a good idea. So with a new build, obviously you're building a new house, aren't you? You're doing it, that's it. In a retrofit, you might think, well, I could have a plan where I want to get to, and can I step by step get there without causing any problems at each step, and do it over a period of time and budget it. So that's a very good idea. But the question of how far you should go in a retrofit, because of the price, because of the problems, because we have so many houses, that is a lot. There's a lot of discussion going on. How far do you go with retrofit? I
think one of the key things about retrofit and benefit houses is if you've got to do repairs, consider it. Look at the performance of what you've got. Don't just repair it as is. Repair to a better standard.
Or take it as far. I know the ACB again have been talking about maybe a step one retrofit is you take your house as far so that it makes it okay to then fit a heat pump. You know, so that's a good step one, isn't it? So you can start beginning to bring heat pump and heat pumps will be quite key, I think, in retrofit. In new build, fabric first, and you can get rid of a lot of the technology.
Do you get involved in the in that NFIT side of things, Iga?
We do, yes. Although our main area is the new build, so we do have a few projects that are retrofit projects. None of them are going through certification though yet.
Okay, fair enough. I just knew that it was worth touching on that one. One for you, I believe, Jay, in particular, that this workshop being run by NSBRC, run in conjunction with the Passivhaus Trust. What is that, and why should we be keeping an eye out for their logo?
So the Passivhaus Trust is an independent. It's not selling anything. It's just promoting the Passivhaus standard in the UK. So I'm a member. Jasper's a member, you know, lots of people who are in the passive world are member, but you don't have to, anybody can join, but they're promoting, educating and trying to assist the uptake of Passivhaus within the UK setting. So they've got lots of information. They've got projects on their sites, example projects. They have open days. There's an open day coming up this weekend, next weekend, I don't know.
This weekend.
This weekend.
Friday
and
Saturday.
Visit a Passivhaus. You can they have a conference once a year. There's lots of useful information on the site. They've got lots of members there, so you could look up somebody if you were thinking of doing a project. You could look at their members list
Yeah.
So they're independent.
I'll do a plug on the open days.
Please do.
So our offices are Passivhaus certified offices. So come and see us there.
Yeah.
Book in for 8th and 9th.
So that's PYC Group or PYC Construction?
Our company there is based, so all our companies are based there.
All of them.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
PYC Group.
Yeah,
But we'll have a tour. of our workshop.
.co.uk.
if you go on the website, you'll find Jasper's
Good.
open, and you'll find houses that are open and other buildings that you could go and see.
And that's got to be a key part of the education, is to actually be able to
education.
see it
Yeah,
as
that's the
well.
great thing about the Passivhaus Trust, is they're helping us all to understand it, learn more, and bring us all together, enabling it.
Sorry, Jasper. Iga, from your side, do you find that you, and the answer might just be no, and that's the end of this question, but that you're having to educate some of your clients when you're in those early stages of what Passivhaus is or could be, etc.?
Yes, definitely. I mean, a lot of our potential clients will have some knowledge because what we tend to do, we create a lot of content to share our knowledge. So if you go to our website, you will find loads of resources you can read. There's a self-built ebook that tackles the low energy. But when it comes to Passivhaus, there is still that kind of need to have those initial conversations, to explain the process, to demystify the whole idea and a standard, because it does rely on a very simple, basic building physics approach. So it's yes, the answer will be yes to that. Yeah.
I mean, and we're not talking new. You were saying earlier, 2008.
Yeah.
Yes.
That we've had Passivhaus. Was it German origins?
Yes. Yeah. It was a German physicist, Wolfgang Feist, who started it off. But now you'll find them all over. There's a lot in America now.
Yeah.
European, all over. You will find them. Australia, New Zealand, European countries.
Wow. I'm nervous to ask this because I know when we were with Tom McSherry, for example, in episode 2, and he was saying we're way behind Europe in terms of the ratio of new builds compared to Europe. How are we featuring with Passivhaus here in the UK?
It's quite low, I hate to say. But then there's a firm of architects we know in Ireland who've got 9,000 units on their books, which to be Passivhaus.
Ireland's going great guns.
Yeah, Ireland are really promoting it incredibly well.
Scotland are talking about.
Scotland might take it on as their own standard. So the Scottish standard should be Passivhaus, and based on that principle for sure, using the tools, and a lot of take up with councils. So York have got over 600 houses they're doing. So it's not much in the scheme of what we're doing, but it's escalating. So if you look,
so it is escalating.
Absolutely. If you look at a graph of Passivhaus builds, it is like that.
Oh, brilliant.
So
I remember the first house.
Yeah. Well, we insulated the first house, actually.
Did you? Yeah. It was in Wales. It was in Wales.
That is amazing. I mean, Iga, obviously perfectly placed with what we were just saying there. You're currently sat up in Scotland, but as you know, we know you're down here as well. Are you seeing that where Scotland is suddenly looking to increase and still escalating down in England as well?
Well, definitely. I mean, the whole, Passivhaus approach and equivalent, it's all happening. I mean, the government introduced, further regulations on the performance criteria, where from 2025 through the Future Home Standard, that is aimed to ensure that all new homes will produce around 75 to 80% less carbon emissions that homes that has been built to the previous building regulations. I mean, the changes are already happening whether you want it or not. So what it means in simple terms is that, from that 2025, you will be required to install low carbon heating system and invest more money into insulation level and construction methods. But if you invest wisely and if you follow the principles of Passivhaus, then that will potentially give you a better benefits rather than just looking purely from compliance perspective.
I mean, definitely your phrase, right? Exactly what I was thinking. No brainer. It definitely seems that way. So for those that want to be educated, Saturday 23rd of November, we've got the Passivhaus workshop here. I'm going to come to all three of you to give us an insight of what are you individually going to be covering at that particular workshop.
So I'm going to be talking about how timber frame construction is developed over the years and how it's improved and changed to get to Passivhaus standards. So there's various methods of doing that, and we've chosen one method. And I'll talk about materials a bit that we use in the system, and particularly cellulose fiber insulation, warm cell insulation, which is made from recycled newspaper, which is what we use. One thing I wanted to say is Passivhaus as a standard is agnostic about materials. But
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, so you can use any materials as long as you adhere to the standards, the science of it in the construction. But we, like with Jay, we choose natural materials. So we're looking at better benefits in health with these natural materials and environmental benefits. So very low embodied carbon materials, whole life carbon, having fantastic results.
Really?
So we'll be talking about all of that.
I like that. That nicely answered that. No, it doesn't have to just be timber, but
no, it doesn't have to be. But we found it's the best way, and we believe in it.
Yeah, and I agree with the sentiment. So that's the angle you're going to be able to take. That's brilliant. So you'll be there on the day. Jay, what are you going to be covering?
think I am doing something called PHPP, which is the modelling software that you use. So it is a rigorous standard. And you have to put the precise building through this piece of modelling, and it's basically a very complex piece of software, and you're putting in all of the data, the shape of the house, the orientation, the particular site, windows, everything. So I'm just going through that with people, just showing what the modelling software does, why it's important, and how it can really help you in the design process. So it's something you should also do early on, because it's meant to be a design tool as well as just checking that the performance is correct. So it's checking the performance and giving you some design help as well. Okay. So I'll be talking about that, a real rushed run through, I think.
Yeah. I guess the nature of these workshops is to give a good insight and make people go,
it's to give, it's to give people an insight and say, oh, that's why. And that's why it's a good thing and why it's really useful.
And that exists, I think.
And that exists. Yeah. And that's why it's not something I should miss off. No. You know, we talk about not missing things off. So PHPP is a part of the whole answer. Having a very accurate way of modelling is part of it.
It's good to know. Really good to know that that's there. Iga, what are you going to be covering here then on the, what day did I say it was? 23rd of November.
So as an architect, I'll be covering a Passivhaus design principles. So I'll be talking about those fabric first principles, and I'll be taking them apart just to illustrate of what we have to take into consideration when designing the Passivhaus. So we'll be talking about orientation a little bit. We'll be talking about overheating, but also solar gain and any forms of passive shading. We'll be talking about insulation envelope, airtightness of the building, and obviously natural ventilation, but also, you know, how do we look at the layout of the building to maximize the potential of that site you're working with. So that's in a kind of like a high level summary of it. There will be a touch on current legislation, where we are. There will be a little bit about the metric of how do we determine, you know, what level to be designing to. So we'll be talking about the heating demand figure and how that relates to, you know, what design aspects we can cover with that.
I love it. I mean, clearly, Iga, your side is going to be someone that's in the early stages. Am I right in reading, though, that even if someone started along this journey, that there's still benefits from this workshop to come and be aware of some things, learn some more? It's not just for those that haven't yet started.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've said it before, early engagement is so important. Yeah. We are actually currently on site with a house which has been put up this week, and we first talked to him at NSBRC Passivhaus workshop in 2019. So
wow,
it doesn't have to take that long, of course. Hopefully it wouldn't.
Yeah, we don't want any more pandemics thrown in. Yeah.
But there was that and design issues and planning issues, but his early engagement has really helped get him what he wants.
So definitely the earlies. Plus, if you're a little bit further, don't shy away. Don't think it's too late. Come down. You've got these wonderful experts to speak to. So as I said, it is Saturday, 23rd of November. go onto the NSBRC website, to the events, the workshops, and get it booked. 10 till 4, totally free, but book your ticket to be able to come. Can I thank all of you for joining so much? Is there anything else that we haven't added that you would like to add?
Yes, tons.
Yes, true. We could go on all day,
Exactly,
couldn't we? Very
exactly.
easily.
There's a
But
lot.
we covered some of the core things that you'd like to have out there.
I think so. I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't give me more time than that.
No.
I'll find something.
You will,
Yeah.
absolutely. Jay?
Yeah, I would like to say that, you know, Passivhaus there's a low energy standard. So if you go, which maybe has been slightly talked about, there's the Passivhaus Classic, but then I'd like to say there's also a Passivhaus Plus, where you start to use your house to generate energy, and energy, we've got several now that we've done, and your house is then generating as much energy as it's using throughout the year. And it also can be a positive generator. And we have one project which we were talking about at the Passivhaus conference that, you know, they take out, it's creating income. So they have an Octopus account which they withdraw money at the end of the year.
Wow.
So you can really, once you start with the principles and the fabric first, you can drop the standard a little bit. Yes, you can, it's true, but you can also go right the other way.
Yeah.
And really your house can start to really work for you.
And then that pays to retrofit the 50 grand kitchen and the cinema
So
room.
let's not forget about, you know, setting the bar high and really going for it.
You did ask me, so and I have something which I did want to say. A lot of people say I'd like to build the Passivhaus principles, but not certify. And what we try and encourage certification, because it is essentially proof of what you've done. So it's proof and evidencing of that quality control of the build and that you have achieved those targets. If you haven't got a certification, you haven't necessarily, you know, you might not have quite got there.
Yeah.
So I think it's an important thing to do.
Okay, I like it. Aniga, anything that you would like to add?
Well, obviously, I would like to encourage everyone to come on a day and listen to all of us elaborating on a subject, not just 45 minutes of today. So there's going to be a whole day of talks. And there is obviously a resource of NSBRC and all of the exhibitors. So it's quite a tangible experience for everyone. But if you cannot come in, I would say that don't hesitate to get in touch with us to discuss it, to discuss your project, to discuss, you know, what's possible for you. We'll be quite happy to give you that, you know, free initial advice and guide you towards the kind of right direction where you want to develop your home.
Well, that is absolutely fabulous. Thank you to all three of you. Thank you, Iga. Thank you to Jay, and thank you to Jasper. And thank you, everybody watching. As I said, this has been recorded the day before you're now watching it, and you're now watching it being broadcast to you. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate, just because of that fact, to ask us any of those questions, because there will be moderators that will be able to answer them for you. But most importantly, Saturday, 23rd of November, come down to this completely free workshop with these experts that are going to be there to answer all of your questions. So from all of us here for episode 4 of Self Build and Renovation Live by the NSBRC in this wonderful location, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next month. I can't remember, I don't think we've got a date yet, but we will let you know when that's going to be and what the topic is that we'll be covering next. So thank you and cheers.